There is a painful question that far too many decent people ask themselves after becoming the target of lies, gossip, betrayal, and character assassination. It's a question that can keep you awake at night, rob you of your confidence, and leave you searching your soul for answers that simply are not there. The question is, where did I go wrong? It sounds like a reasonable question because we have all been taught that conflict must have a cause and that criticism must contain at least a grain of truth. But as we grow older and experience more of the world, we begin to understand that not every attack is rooted in our behavior. Sometimes it is rooted in someone else's inability to accept who we have become. One of the greatest mistakes a person can make is believing that every enemy is responding to something they have actually done. Life simply does not work that way. There are people who become disturbed by your very presence, not because you've harmed them, but because your existence forces them to confront parts of themselves they have spent years trying to hide. You may represent the discipline they never developed, the courage they never found, or the honesty they abandoned long ago. Your life becomes an uncomfortable mirror, reflecting back everything they have tried to avoid seeing within themselves. This is why some of the strongest attacks you will ever experience seem completely disconnected from reality. They appear out of nowhere, often at the very moment you begin finding peace within yourself or gaining confidence after years of struggle. Just when you stop seeking approval from everyone around you, someone suddenly begins working overtime to convince others that you are not who they believe you to be. It feels confusing because it is confusing. You cannot understand irrational behavior by applying rational thinking to it. Over the years, I have learned that many people spend far too much time searching themselves for flaws rather than giving very little attention to the motivations of those attacking them. Self-examination is healthy. Every one of us should be willing to admit our mistakes and accept responsibility when we are wrong. Growth demands humility, but there comes a point when endless self-examination turns into emotional self-punishment. If you continually assume that every lie told about you must somehow be your fault, you surrender your peace to people who never intended to tell the truth in the first place. There comes a moment when the question must change. Instead of endlessly asking yourself what you did to deserve such relentless opposition, ask yourself something far more revealing. Ask yourself, what is it about your existence that makes certain people so uncomfortable? That simple shift in perspective changes everything because it moves your attention away from false guilt and toward the real issue. In many cases, the attack was never about your behavior. It was about the threat your character represents to someone who cannot tolerate authenticity. Healthy disagreements are a natural part of life. Mature adults will occasionally see the world differently, misunderstand one another, or even hurt each other's feelings. When emotionally healthy people experience conflict, they communicate, resolve what they can, learn whatever lessons needed to be learned, and continue living their lives. They do not build their identity around destroying another human being. They certainly do not dedicate months or years to recruiting an audience against someone they claim not to care about. That is what makes a smear campaign so different from ordinary conflict. A smear campaign is fueled by obsession rather than resolution. It's not satisfied with disagreement. It seeks destruction. The goal is no longer to address a problem, but to erase the credibility of another person entirely. The person leading the campaign often becomes consumed by thoughts of their target, monitoring their every move, twisting every success into something suspicious, and treating every achievement as if it were somehow offensive. Think about how much emotional energy that requires. Healthy people invest their time building careers, strengthening relationships, improving themselves, and creating opportunities for the future. They do not wake up wondering how they can ruin another person's reputation before breakfast. They have dreams of their own to pursue. They have families to love, goals to accomplish, and lives to enjoy. Obsession leaves very little room for any of those things because it demands constant attention. This is why I always encourage people to stop being hypnotized by the volume of the attacks. Just because someone speaks about you constantly does not mean they are speaking truthfully. In many cases, their endless criticism reveals less about your character than it does about their emotional condition. Healthy minds do not become fixated on destroying people. Healthy minds move forward. Unhealthy minds become trapped in cycles of resentment until bitterness becomes the center of their identity. There's something remarkably powerful about a person who finally learns to value themselves. It changes the way they speak, the way they carry themselves, and the decisions they make. They no longer apologize for existing. They stop chasing acceptance from people who have already decided to misunderstand them. They become comfortable setting boundaries and refusing relationships that demand the sacrifice of their dignity. Ironically, this personal growth often attracts resistance instead of applause. You will think people would celebrate someone becoming stronger, wiser, and more confident. Emotionally secure people usually do. They recognize that another person's success takes nothing away from their own. But insecure individuals often experience someone else's confidence as a personal attack. Your growth silently reminds them of everything they have neglected within themselves. That's why confidence is so frequently misrepresented. People who cannot intimidate you may begin calling you arrogant. Those who once benefited from your silence may accuse you of becoming difficult. Individuals who are comfortable when you are constantly doubting yourself suddenly become uncomfortable the moment you begin believing in your own worth. Nothing about your character may have changed except your willingness to stop accepting mistreatment. Yet that single change can completely alter the way others respond to you. The truth is that genuine confidence exposes hidden insecurity without saying a single word. It is not your responsibility to make yourself smaller so that insecure people can feel bigger. A light does not apologize because someone else prefers darkness. Your responsibility is not to reduce your strength in order to protect someone else's fragile ego. Your responsibility is to continue growing while remaining humble enough to never confuse confidence with pride. There's an enormous difference between knowing your worth and believing you are worth more than everyone else. One quality that consistently unsettles manipulative people is discernment. Discernment is more than intelligence. It is the ability to recognize patterns beneath appearances. It notices inconsistencies that others overlook. It pays attention to actions instead of empty promises. It understands that a charming smile does not always reveal an honest heart. Manipulative individuals depend upon appearances to maintain influence. They survive by carefully managing the image they present to the world, often convincing others that they are generous, trustworthy, or deeply concerned while their private behavior tells an entirely different story. As long as no one questions the performance, the illusion remains intact. But the moment someone begins seeing through the mask, the manipulator senses danger. The danger is not physical, it's psychological. They understand that if one person can recognize the truth, others eventually might as well. Rather than addressing the concerns honestly, many manipulators choose a different strategy. They attempt to destroy the credibility of the observer before the observer's credibility can expose them. Suddenly, the person asking reasonable questions becomes the problem. The one speaking uncomfortable truths is labeled as unstable, jealous, bitter, or divisive. It is a desperate attempt to protect an image that cannot survive honest examination. This explains why some people become strangely aggressive toward individuals who simply refuse to be fooled. You never declared war against them. You merely refuse to participate in their fantasy. For someone who has built their entire identity around controlling perception, that refusal feels like an act of rebellion. Instead of accepting accountability, they begin recruiting others into a campaign designed to ensure that your voice is never taken seriously. I know about this because I have been the target of this. This is why I'm an expert on this. One of the greatest turning points in any manipulative relationship comes when the other person finally realizes they have lost control over you. Until that moment, they are usually convinced that with enough pressure, enough guilt, enough emotional games, or enough intimidation, you will eventually surrender. They believe that if they keep pushing hard enough, you'll return to being the version of yourself that made their life easier. But once they understand that your growth is real and your boundaries are no longer negotiable, they begin looking for another way to regain the upper hand. That is when the battlefield changes. Instead of trying to control your mind, they begin trying to control your image. Since they can no longer dictate how you think, they attempt to influence how other people think about you. It is a calculated shift that has nothing to do with truth and everything to do with perception. They understand that while they may no longer have direct access to your emotions, they may still be able to create obstacles around you by poisoning the opinions of others. This is why smear campaigns often seem so confusing to the person experiencing them. You may have walked away peacefully. You may have stopped arguing altogether. You may have chosen silence over conflict because you were more interested in protecting your peace than winning an argument. Yet somehow the attacks continue. Stories begin circulating. Rumors appear from places you never expected. People who have never shared a meaningful conversation with you suddenly seem convinced they know exactly who you are. When that happens, understand something that is both painful and freeing. You are no longer dealing with someone seeking resolution. You are dealing with someone seeking control by another method. They could not capture your mind, so now they hope to capture your reputation. That realization alone should change the way you interpret everything that follows. One of the reasons smear campaigns spread so easily is because they appeal to emotion long before they appeal to facts. Human beings are naturally curious. We are drawn to dramatic stories, shocking accusations, and whispered secrets. A manipulative person understands this better than most. They know that once emotion takes over, many people stop asking for proof. They simply repeat what they heard because the story itself is entertaining enough to pass along. Notice how rarely those leading a smear campaign provide clear evidence. Instead, they rely on phrases designed to plant seeds of doubt. They may say, "I've heard some things," or "just be careful around that person," or "I don't want to say too much, but..." Those statements are intentionally vague because vagueness allows the listener's imagination to do the rest. Once uncertainty enters someone's mind, it can grow into suspicion without a single fact ever being presented. This is why people who value truth must discipline themselves not to become emotional spectators. We should never accept accusations simply because they sound convincing or because they are repeated by several people. Lies have a strange way of multiplying when enough people repeat them without ever stopping to ask where they originated. A rumor can travel around the world before the truth has even put on its shoes. That reality should always encourage us when we find ourselves on the receiving end of false accusations. The fact that someone believes a lie does not transform the lie into truth. Reality is not determined by popularity. Truth has never depended on majority vote. Throughout history, people have been misunderstood, misrepresented, and falsely accused, yet the truth remained unchanged regardless of how many voices attempted to bury it. Many people believe they must answer every accusation that is thrown their way. They feel pressured to defend themselves against every rumor, respond to every insult, and correct every false narrative. While there are certainly moments when speaking the truth is necessary, there are also times when silence becomes one of the strongest forms of confidence a person can possess. People leading smear campaigns often expect an emotional reaction. They hope you will become angry, lose your composure, or begin attacking them with the same bitterness they have shown toward you. That reaction allows them to point at your frustration and claim they were right about you all along. In many cases, provoking you becomes part of the strategy. Remaining calm does not mean you are weak. It means you refuse to let someone else's emotional instability dictate your behavior. There is tremendous strength in refusing to become the person your enemies are trying to create. Your peace becomes a form of resistance because it denies them the chaos they were hoping to produce. This does not mean silence is always easy. There are moments when every part of you wants to defend your name. There are days when you wonder why lies seem to travel faster than honesty. But time has a remarkable way of exposing patterns. Eventually, people begin noticing who is constantly creating conflict and who is consistently living their life with integrity. Character may be slower than gossip, but it is also far more durable. One of the greatest traps a smear campaign creates is distraction. It tempts you to spend your energy chasing every person who misunderstood you instead of investing that energy into becoming everything you were created to be. Before long, your life becomes centered around defending yourself rather than fulfilling your purpose. That is exactly what your critics want. They want your attention because attention is a form of power. Every hour you spend obsessing over their opinions is an hour taken away from your family, your health, your dreams, your business, your creativity, and your peace of mind. They cannot stop your progress unless they first convince you to stop yourself. There comes a point where wisdom demands that you release the need to be understood by everyone. Not every misunderstanding deserves your explanation. Not every accusation deserves your response. Some people have already decided what they want to believe, and no amount of evidence will change a mind that has become emotionally committed to a lie. The healthiest response is often to continue building a life that speaks louder than the rumors ever could. Continue producing, continue creating, continue serving, continue growing, continue becoming the kind of person whose consistent character eventually answers questions that words never could. Perhaps the greatest lesson we can learn from all of this is that obsession is never a sign of emotional health. People who are secure within themselves simply do not dedicate their lives to destroying someone else's. They may disagree with you. They may dislike you. They may choose not to associate with you. But emotionally healthy individuals move forward. They do not remain trapped in a never-ending mission to erase another person's existence. When someone cannot stop talking about you, cannot stop monitoring you, cannot stop trying to recruit others against you, and cannot stop celebrating every challenge you face, they are revealing something far more significant than anything they could ever reveal about you. They are revealing the condition of their own heart. Hatred has become their occupation. Bitterness has become their identity. Resentment has become the lens through which they see the world. The tragedy is that while they believe they are imprisoning you, they have actually imprisoned themselves. Every waking hour spent studying your life is an hour stolen from improving their own. Every lie they create requires another lie to protect it. Every attempt to bury someone else's light only pushes them deeper into their own darkness. That is the hidden cost of obsession. It consumes the person carrying it long before it ever reaches its intended target. As I bring these thoughts to a close, I want to leave you with something that I believe every person needs to remember when they become the target of a smear campaign. Never allow another person's hatred to become the architect of your identity. You know who they are. The people who truly know your heart know who you are. Those who matter will judge you by your own consistent character, not by the noise created by people who never intended to be fair. Do not waste your precious years trying to convince everyone to like you. That is a battle no one wins. Instead, dedicate yourself to becoming more honest, more disciplined, more compassionate, more courageous, and more committed to truth than you were yesterday. Character is built over a lifetime, while gossip often burns itself out under the weight of its own contradictions. Always remember that people who are genuinely at peace with themselves do not spend their days plotting the destruction of another human being. They are too busy building meaningful lives, strengthening healthy relationships, and becoming better versions of themselves. Whenever you find yourself being relentlessly targeted by someone who seems unable to let you go, resist the temptation to believe that you must somehow deserve their obsession. More often than not, their fixation says far more about the battle taking place within them than it ever will about you. So stop asking yourself why you cannot satisfy people who have already decided to misunderstand you. Stop measuring your worth by the opinions of those who benefit from diminishing your light. Stand firmly in your truth, protect your peace, and continue moving forward with quiet confidence. In the end, the strongest answer to a life built on lies is a life consistently lived in truth. Time has a way of exposing both. And when that day comes, your greatest victory will not be that you defeated your critics. It'll be that you never allowed them to turn you into one of them. And that's the greatest victory. Oh, I've been through it, trust me. And people have revealed themselves. But at the same time, as years have gone by, they're already revealed. So I didn't have to do anything, and you don't have to do anything. It's a beautiful thing. Just don't get caught up in their traps. And every attack is a command for you to look inward to build yourself, your character, your life, your real relationships, and your connection to the Creator God Himself. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it motivated you. And I hope if you're going through something similar, it has given you some thoughts on how to deal with it successfully, because what I just shared you really is the only way to go. Much love to you all. On to the next one. Lance Scurv out. Peace.